just a daily encouragement on my way to work. Pray for the day ahead. I was thinking about the book of Acts. And in Acts chapter 3 and then into 4, the disciples are being persecuted and they pray. They pray to the Lord for boldness. They say to the Lord, Lord, enable us to be strengthened so that we might be bold to proclaim your word. Massive paraphrase, but that's what they pray. They pray for boldness and they pray for signs and wonders. You know what the Lord does? He gives them signs and wonders. The earth shakes immediately. And they begin to speak with boldness. The interesting thing about this passage, though, is that they've already been described as speaking with boldness. Peter, as he's been addressing the council, the elders, those who want him to keep quiet, has already been described as someone who is speaking with boldness. Now, they pray for boldness, and their prayers answered. Peter and the disciples will speak with boldness. But as you follow through the book of Acts, what you end up being surprised by is how that prayer is answered throughout the rest of the story. Because the next person to be described as speaking with boldness ends up being the Apostle Paul. The disciples in Acts chapter 4 praying for boldness. There's no ways they could have anticipated that prayer being answered in the life of Paul, the one who's persecuting the church. Paul ends up preaching with boldness. Another man that ends up being someone who preaches with boldness is Apollos. Again, he just appears out of nowhere. No one knows where he comes from, how he got there, how he ends up preaching the gospel, who taught him. But here's Apollos now on the scene, and he's preaching with boldness. But it's throughout the book of Acts we see disciples of Christ preaching with boldness. And I think one of the most wonderful things about the prayer the disciples prayed in Acts chapter 4 is that God answered their prayer in their presence, but he answers their prayer today as you and I take up the mantle of preaching the gospel with boldness. That prayer, their prayer, is being answered in us. Take courage. The disciples prayed for us. They might not have known they were praying for us, but God used their prayer way more than they could have ever imagined. Their prayer is being answered in us today. Take a step of faith. Have their prayer back then answered. Amen.